Imagine if I told you that for the past 40 years, every time you carefully sorted your plastic bottles into that blue recycling bin, you were participating in one of the biggest corporate lies in American history. You'd probably think I was exaggerating, right? Well, in September 2024, the state of California sued ExxonMobil for doing exactly that, deliberately misleading millions of Americans about plastic recycling while knowing it was essentially impossible. The lawsuit alleges that ExxonMobil knew that 95% of the plastic in the blue bin was going to be incinerated, go into the environment, or end up in a landfill, according to California Attorney General Rob Bonta. And this isn't just one bad company. This is a systematic deception that's left America drowning in trash with nowhere to put it. Here's what makes this crisis terrifying. We have 18 years before America's landfills are completely full. And while corporations have been lying to you about recycling, they've been shipping our trash to poor countries, poisoning communities near landfills, and sticking taxpayers with a $417 billion cleanup bill. This isn't just an environmental problem. It's a ticking time bomb that's about to explode in every American community. The lies are being exposed, the system is collapsing, and we're running out of time to fix it. Let's start with the evidence that exposes this entire fraud. California's lawsuit against ExxonMobil isn't just about one company, it's about an entire industry that has been lying to you since the 1980s. The lawsuit reveals that ExxonMobil and the plastics industry launched a massive public relations campaign to convince Americans that plastic recycling worked, even though their own internal documents proved it was economically unviable. Industry documents from the 1980s and 1990s show companies knew recycling wouldn't work at scale, but instead of finding real solutions, they spent decades convincing you that the problem was your fault if you didn't recycle properly. And it gets worse. The Fraud of Plastic Recycling report found newly disclosed industry documents proving that companies knew plastics couldn't be recycled indefinitely, but they kept pushing the recycling myth anyway, and they spent big money doing it. The industry launched a $50 million per year advertising campaign to sell Americans on plastic recycling, even though their own internal documents proved it wouldn't work. But let's talk about the scale of this deception. Coca-Cola alone is projected to use over 9.1 billion pounds of plastic per year by 2030. That's not a typo, 9.1 billion pounds. And in 2024, they quietly dropped their reuse targets while continuing to claim they're environmentally responsible. Meanwhile, Break Free from Plastic found that Coca-Cola was responsible for more branded plastic pollution than any other company on Earth. 33,820 pieces of Coca-Cola plastic waste found across 40 countries in just 1 year. This isn't companies making mistakes. This is deliberate fraud on a global scale. And while they've been lying to you, they've been making billions while sticking you with the cleanup costs and health consequences. While corporations have been lying about recycling, the reality is that America drowns in trash, and our landfills become environmental disasters. Let me paint you a picture of how dire this situation really is. America has 18 years before our landfills are completely full. The Northeast is running out of space the fastest, with places like Bergen County, New Jersey, facing landfill closures that have forced them to consider shipping waste as far as Panama and Costa Rica. Over the next 5 years, total U.S. landfill capacity will decrease by more than 15%. But it's not just about running out of space. Existing landfills are becoming environmental disasters. Let me tell you about Chiquita Canyon Landfill in California. The landfill is experiencing underground chemical fires. Trash is literally smoldering beneath the surface. Residents have filed over 9,500 complaints about toxic air quality, and the company has been hit with hundreds of violations. People living nearby are getting sick, and nobody knows how to stop it. And this isn't isolated. Municipal solid waste landfills are the third largest source of methane emissions in America, accounting for 14.4% of all human-related methane. But here's the kicker. Scientists found that actual methane emissions from landfills are 51% higher than EPA estimates. The government literally doesn't know how bad this problem is because they're not measuring it correctly. Meanwhile, the recycling system that was supposed to save us has completely collapsed. Only 21% of recyclable materials actually get recycled, and for plastic specifically, less than 5% becomes new products. The rest goes straight to landfills. And here's what really exposes the lie. It costs $147 per ton to recycle materials in San Jose, California, compared to just $28 per ton to dump them in a landfill. In New York City, officials spend $200 more per ton to recycle than to just throw it away. The economics never worked, and they knew it. But here's where this crisis gets truly disgusting. When China stopped accepting our recycling waste in 2018 through their national sword policy, did America fix its recycling system? No. We just started dumping our trash on poorer countries. The numbers are staggering. In 2018 alone, America exported 157,000 shipping containers of plastic waste to countries with poor waste management systems. That's 1.07 million tons of plastic waste, about one-third of everything we claim to recycle. And it's getting worse. Since 2021, the US, Canada, and the European Union have offloaded hundreds of millions of tons of plastic to developing countries, where much of it gets landfilled, burned, or just dumped in nature. Some countries went from accepting almost no plastic waste in 2017 to thousands of tons by 2023. We're talking about Angola, Ethiopia, Myanmar, Uzbekistan, countries that don't have the infrastructure to handle our trash safely. This is environmental colonialism. We generate the waste, lie to our citizens about recycling, then dump our problems on the world's poorest countries while their communities suffer the health consequences. People living near these dump sites face increased rates of respiratory disease, cancer, and birth defects from burning plastic waste and toxic chemical runoff. And when these countries try to fight back, we ignore them. In 2019, 187 countries voted to amend the Basel Convention to limit plastic waste trading. Guess which country refused to sign? The United States. We're literally the only major country refusing to take responsibility for our own trash. So where has the U.S. government been while this crisis unfolds? Either asleep at the wheel or actively helping corporations avoid responsibility. The EPA's enforcement of waste violations has been woefully inadequate. While landfills poison communities and emit massive amounts of methane, the agency finally announced its first-ever climate enforcement initiative in 2023, after decades of this crisis building. Meanwhile, the government gives tax credits to waste management companies, the same companies profiting from this broken system. Virginia offers credits up to 40% of corporate tax liability for recycling equipment, even though we've proven recycling doesn't work at scale. And who suffers the most? The same communities that always bear the brunt of environmental disasters. 54% of landfills are located in communities with higher percentages of people of color or low-income residents. These families face 12% higher rates of birth defects and increased cancer risks. But here's the number that should concern every American taxpayer. Continuing with current waste management practices will impose massive costs on communities nationwide. The waste management crisis will only get more expensive as landfills fill up and disposal costs skyrocket. The waste management industry generated $145 billion in revenue in 2023 while sticking taxpayers with the long-term cleanup costs. These companies make money through government contracts, municipal fees, and disposal charges, essentially profiting from a system they helped break while taxpayers fund the consequences. Here's the bottom line. America is drowning in trash, running out of places to put it, and the clock is ticking. We have 18 years before landfills are full. Corporate lies have poisoned our understanding of the problem, and the government has failed to hold anyone accountable. But there are real solutions if we act now. We need to force corporations to take responsibility for the entire life cycle of their products. Countries like Germany have extended producer responsibility laws that make companies pay for disposal and recycling of their packaging. We need to stop the international dumping immediately, join the Basel Convention, and stop using poor countries as our trash can. We need massive investment in domestic waste infrastructure, not fake recycling that doesn't work, but real circular economy solutions where waste becomes input for new products. And we need to vote out politicians who take money from waste management companies while communities suffer. Waste Management Inc. spent $660,000 on lobbying in 2024 alone, and their PACs gave over $200,000 to federal candidates. Most importantly, we need to stop pretending individual recycling will solve this. This is a corporate and government failure that requires systemic change, not personal responsibility. America's trash crisis isn't some distant environmental problem. It's a ticking time bomb that's about to explode in every community. For 40 years, corporations have lied about recycling while making the problem worse. The government has failed to hold them accountable while communities suffer and taxpayers get stuck with the bill. We have 18 years before this system completely collapses. 18 years to force corporate accountability, invest in real infrastructure, and stop dumping our problems on the world's poorest countries. But here's what gives me hope. California sued ExxonMobil and is demanding billions in damages. Communities are fighting back against toxic landfills. Countries are refusing to take our trash. The lies are being exposed. The question is whether we'll act fast enough. What's the most shocking thing you learned about America's trash crisis? Have you noticed changes in your local recycling programs? Share your experiences in the comments. And if this investigation opened your eyes to how we're being lied to, about one of the biggest environmental crises facing America, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started exposing the systems that are failing American families.